of a woman, and it says that I don't do mornings. Maybe some is, I don't do mornings, meaning I don't work in the morning. This brother would say that in the mornings that he's never heard his wife say anything good in the morning. And he says when he said, I've never heard her something good. One morning, he had done something at night, prepared something for his wife, and then in the morning she woke up, and while he was sleeping, she said, Jazakallahu khairan. And the brother was shocked that she had said Jazakallahu khairan, because in the mornings, he never ever heard anything good from his wife. And then he said that in that morning I felt as if I was dreaming, that I still hadn't woken up, and I was shocked that these words had come from my wife. And you'll see in all these quotes, and this happens if you were to, these are all the men's, if you were to take their situation, you'll see that everybody's blaming the wife. Again, it's always the focus on the wife, and the wife does this, and the wife that this is always the wife's fault. And I tell you, if you take these exact same men and get the quotes from their wives, you will see and read that all the fault is on the husband's side. That he says, my husband does this, this, and that. My husband does that. You'll see the exact opposites on the other side, and it's actually like a bias. And in fact, sometimes when I hear shuyukh commenting on what the wives say, that you have to hear both sides. And always in dealing, the Prophet ﷺ said that if someone is to judge, that he doesn't judge between two people until he brings both of them in front of him and listens to both sides. And that would be a qadi's biggest mistake, is to hear one side of the story and make a ruling based on that. And so it never, in these kind of issues, is it just you take one side and then all this hatred goes for the other party. But in fact, you'll see in a lot of these in a lot of these situations, it needs to be a reflection, or it needs to be a focus on the Kitab al-Sunnah, and everybody, like we said before, needs to focus on themselves and needs to look back and forget that their wife is going to use this against them, or that the opposite, but needs to look at themselves and see the Sunnah and see how they measure up to this and fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, as the state of the Muslims that we're living in, you'll see that there's a sweeping ignorance happening, and that a lot of people are ignorant of their deen. We don't see like the repercussions of this until you start looking deeply into some of the problems that are happening. When a Muslim, I know some people, they don't want to study Islam, they'd rather go to, say, like a Western university, study philosophy, because they want to learn how to refute these incorrect philosophies. But really that person's, like his brain, if you were to draw it, it would be like an empty circle with knowledge of Islam. And Islam gives him the keys, or gives him the tools to dissect and be able to refute those philosophies. But this person is saying that I don't want to study Islam, I want to go into this field so that I can refute him. That person doesn't have the tools to refute those comments. He doesn't have the ilm to do that. And a lot of people, because they don't have ilm, knowledge of the Kitab al-Sunnah, just as a simple matter, that a lot of people, you can ask how many people know Quranic Arabic, right? You'll see how many of the youth don't even know how to read the Quran. And on top of that, if they knew how to read Quran, how many of them understand the Quran? And you can say that the percentage is very, very small. Even people that know Arabic, that they don't open the Quran amongst like Arabic youth and so on, they don't open the Quran and they don't learn it. And then on top of that, you will ask them how many books of hadith are there. Have they ever opened a book of hadith in their life? And the answer is no. They have no idea about what goes on in the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These people, and they're graduating, they're getting older, and they're getting married. And now they're entering this marriage with no knowledge of the Quran and Sunnah. With no knowledge. Where are they getting their aqeedah from? They're getting it from the television sets. Where do they learn about how to be a husband? They learn from the soap operas. The soap operas that instead of being in a masjid learning Quran 2 hours a day, all throughout their youth, they spent maybe 2 hours a day on soap operas and watching television at night. Not 2 hours, in fact the number might be more like 6 hours. Spending their entire nights with their face down on a pillow looking at the television. As when we left Canada, my wife was telling me that there was a family there that their boy, when she was leaving the house, that boy was sitting in front of the television set. He was sitting on the couch with his, sitting on his stomach looking at the television like this. He didn't even get up to say salam, but he was just sitting there staring like a zombie at the television set. She said that we came back like 6 years later to that city, and when she entered the house, the boy was sitting there with his hands on his cheeks, staring at the television like a zombie. Only he had gotten bigger, right? For the lapse of time, 6 years, but he had gotten bigger, but he was still just like as if that boy was sitting there for 6 years looking at that television set and absorbing. And don't think that they're not absorbing what comes from the television set. Their aqeedah is coming. To give you an example of this aqeedah that I'm talking about, that a person learns from the television set, I remember once these two brothers getting to a fight, and during that fight the brother made a statement. He said, this is a free country, I can do what I want. He was in Saudi Arabia, so he doesn't know what country he's in, but he said, this is a free country, I can do what I want. And then I said, like, that statement, I think there's maybe even a television show called It's a Free Country or something like that. It's a statement that everybody says. And he doesn't even know what he's saying. It has nothing to do with the situation, but he's just saying it's a free country, meaning that he had absorbed that and sucked in that kind of aqeedah from the television. And now when he gets into a fight or something, that he hits back, and those aqeedas, those things he believes in, comes out. Another example of that is if you giving lectures about different topics, fiqh, normally people don't say anything about it until you come to the issue of Muslim women in Islam. And then you'll see all the students raising their hand, well, I don't agree with you on this, and I don't agree with you on that. I like to comment on this. But all the comments are not coming from Quran and Sunnah. They're coming from the television sets. And they're coming from, I know, like in Canada, the whole curriculum in high school was pro-feminist. And they took out all the old novels that they would teach us in English class and replaced them all with female authors. All the novels were female authors talking about female heroes in the story. Talking about female heroes and so on, and they were pumping this. And in Canada it's very strong that they would talk about that. But just to show you that the youth, they just absorb this from all the media around them, and then when it comes time, when they have to bring out and fall back on the knowledge that they have, they fall back on the aqeedah that they learn from these soap operas and movies and and you name it, the different media that they get. At a conference that I went to once, there was a lecture, there was parallel lectures, and one of them was about Islamic schools and how to establish Islamic schools, and the other lecture was about family problems. Okay, the lecture that was about Islamic school was, there was even a lecture before it that was highly, attended, and everybody just left at the end of that lecture. And there was about 12 people in a huge room, and about 12 people that actually cared about Islamic schools. The family problems lecture was packed out, right? And it was full, and there's people waiting outside in the standing room only, and so on. And then in our lecture, they were saying that it's interesting that all these people have these family problems. They're coming into these family problem lectures because 12 years ago or 10 years ago, a decade ago, they didn't care about the Islamic school lectures. And even till today, they don't really care about the Islamic school lectures. But had they educated themselves and cared about raising their youth 10 years ago, there would be less people attending the family problem lectures. Because that's what happens when these people grow up with no knowledge of the Quran and Sunnah, and then they get into these marriages always based on looks, that they don't care about a person's deen. It has to be the looks. And once they get that looks, it's okay if she doesn't wear hijab, or it's okay if I'll let that go, but I'm just going to get married for the looks. Then the looks, they change, and you're left with the woman's khuluq, and she's left with your khuluq. And then now you have to live with her character. And that's how the problems then come forward. The principle that we have to understand in this, and how to be a good Muslim husband, and now we're talking specifically about dealing with your wife, and in fact dealing with everyone in the world. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Kullu ibn Adama khatta," that all the children of Adam, kullu bani Adama khatta, that all the children of Adam make mistakes. Khata, a person who makes many mistakes and is always faulty and always imperfect. Kullu bani Adam